Hello, hello, Mints. I guess no one wants to be the first one to join. It's like a party. No one wants to be the first one to come to come to a party.
Yes.
Okay, I'll give it, I guess, a couple more minutes and then I'll get started. I I have some notes. What I was planning on doing today was just summarizing books one and two. Um, and then I want to read. I'm gonna read to you guys like the seventh letter from Plato. He had a bunch of like autobiographical letters that he wrote, and the seventh one big chunk of it is uh, kind of talking about exactly why he wrote the Republic and like the state of mind he was in while writing it. And like all these letters he wrote when he was really old, like maybe in his 70s, like before he died. So it's like looking back on all of his writings and all of his works. So I feel like that would be kind of cool to go over. Okay, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll just get started then. Let's get started. So, you guys don't have to have read The Republic, obviously, or even books one or two. I'm just going to go over it quickly. But super broadly speaking, this book tried to tackle the big question of what is justice, and then what a just city or like a perfect city would look like. And then Plato tries to draw a bunch of analogies or like compare it to the soul. You need to have a soul that's in harmony if you are to have a city that is in harmony. And to look at what a harmonious soul ends up being, he like makes the analogy of a city. So there's like interactions going on within the soul the same way there's interactions going within a city, and there's different components and different things that are responsible. Um, but yeah, I'm just gonna briefly summarize or read some notes that I've jotted down about books one and two just to start off. Let's see. So in book one, the dialogue begins with Socrates visiting the home of a wealthy man, an old guy named Cephalus, and he's invited over there, kind of like not against his will, but he didn't want to go there originally, but he's dragged over there, and they start discussing basically what it means to live a good life, what it means to be an old man, um, and he starts just probing Cephalus starts probing Socrates a little bit, and then they engage in discussion. And this kind of leads to the topic of justice. So Socrates ends up asking Cephalus, and then his son, who's also with him there, Polymarchus. Polymarchus. I don't know how to say his name. But most importantly, the guy in question for this book or for this chapter is Thrasymachus or Thrasymachus, and he is a sophist. And what a sophist is basically like I don't want to say a pseudo intellectual, but someone who gets paid for being smart and giving lessons like a tutor. And they were very like prominent at the time in Greece. Sophists would teach rhetoric, they would teach politics, mathematics, all these types of things. So like their prestige was like the most important thing for them. Their how they were like seen was the most important thing for them. And this is the person, Thrasymachus, who Socrates kind of like not attacks but probes, starts to ask these questions about justice. So it starts off with Cephalus' view. And he says that justice is simply about telling the truth and repaying debts, right? So repaying debts is kind of like what justice is for Cephalus. Socrates bounces back and challenges this. And he argues that there are situations where following these rules blindly could cause harm, like in an example he gives of returning a weapon to a madman. Um, like even though you should repay the debt, like give the thing back to the man, it's not always the case that it's what would be just or what would be smart to do, what would be good to do. Then his son comes in, Polemarchus comes in, and he says, and he builds on this a little bit. And then he says, okay, justice is helping friends and harming enemies, right? So it goes from justice being what justice being repaying debts to justice being helping friends and harming enemies. And then Socrates kind of bounces back and points out that people can be mistaken about who their friends and enemies are. Um, that sometimes you don't know a friend is an enemy, and sometimes you don't know that an enemy might be a friend. And he says that importantly, harming anyone makes us worse off rather than better. At the end of the day, we just shouldn't be harming people. That doesn't make things more just. And then finally, the man in question comes in, Thrasymachus, and he starts to argue. His main point is that justice is advantage of the stronger. Um, yeah, that it is the advantage of the stronger that makes something just. That rulers make laws to serve their own interest. That it's like a self-serving thing. According to him, justice is whatever benefits those in power. So whatever benefits the powerful man is what's just, according to Thrasymachus. Socrates bounces back again, and then he says, okay, are you sure about that? Because true leaders should act in the benefit of the people and of others, not for personal gain. So that's basically like the discussion going on about justice. And at the end of the chapter, Thrasymachus kind of gets absolutely rebutted and starts to sweat and he doesn't know how to control himself. He turns to an ad hominem attack. He ends up saying something like, something about Socrates like drinking milk from like I forget, but he like basically tries to insult Socrates, which is very unsophist and very like unclassy of him. This is like a group of intellectual political guys, and then he resorts to ad hominem attacks, which makes him look pretty bad. So then we move on to book two, and then in book two we have the two main characters who try and build off of this argument, try and actually understand what justice might be, and it's Glaucon and Adeimantus. These two interlocutors were actually Plato's, or the names that he gave these two interlocutors were Plato's brothers. So he had two brothers that he thought very highly of. So they're like the voices of reason in this dialogue, right? It's Glaucon and Adeimantus and Socrates who are like the three voices of reason, or the three smart people in this whole book. So they come in and they try and build on Thrasymachus' view of justice. Glaucon says, and he says that suggesting that only to act justly because that people only act justly because they fear punishment or desire a good reputation. And he argues this through the story of the Ring of Gyges. And if you guys aren't familiar with the story of the Ring of Gyges, it's basically where a man becomes invisible by like switching a ring on his finger or something like that, and then he can become visible again by switching it. And so basically, he has the power of invisibility and he can do anything he wants. And the question is, if you had no fear of being caught, wouldn't you always just act unjustly? If you could do whatever you wanted, wouldn't you just always do unjust things? Wouldn't you always steal and murder and stuff like that? Socrates kind of probes back and says, well, not really. Justice is valuable even if you don't gain anything from it. It's not about gaining something, it's not about repaying debts, and it's not about uh, acting unjustly because there's some sort of consequences that might. So then they kind of start talking about the origins of justice, what originally justice, like where it comes from, why we have this concept in societies and in city states. He suggests that justice started off as a type of like social contract. So like two people shaking hands saying, I won't stab you if you won't stab me. It's to basically not harm each other, mutual benefit, something like that. But if you were given the chance, if you were given some sort of free pass to act unjustly, to get out of this social contract without any punishments, then people would act selfishly and unjustly. And this social contract can kind of be analogous to like the law or the rules that are set. Adeimantus comes in and he adds another little part or another little piece. And he says that people only praise the just, or justice is only looked at as something good or as something you should seek because it's beneficial to other things in your life, not because it's intrinsically good. People don't act justly because it's good in itself. People act justly because it'll make them look better in front of other people. It'll heighten their social status. It'll improve their lives further down the road. Um, and that's what's desirable, not justice itself as an end, just as a means, right? Just as a way of getting to a goal. Then they start to talk about the main point or topic or the project of the Republic, which is a just city, this ideal utopia. Socrates proposes, kind of sets the stage, that But on a larger scale, just imagining a city is what we should kind of aim at. Let's just imagine a city and build from there, from the bottom up. So first off, okay, everyone needs their basic needs in the city. If everyone needs their basic needs, everyone needs a role, and everyone needs to cooperate for the common good, for what is good. And that's where they end off. That was book two. So I guess this today we can talk about what this city might look like, or what we can get at. Before I guess we start the discussion, I just quickly want to read the seventh letter of the Republic, or not of the Republic, Plato's seventh letter. He wrote a bunch of autobiographical letters that for a while it was argued whether or not he actually wrote these or whether they were just like forged or fake. But yeah, we found his letters, and the seventh one talks about exactly why he wrote the Republic or the state of mind he was in. So I'll read this for you guys. This is just like a direct quote. When I was a young man, I felt as yet many young men do. I felt at the very moment I attained my majority, I should engage in public affairs. And there came my way an opportunity that I want to tell you about. The democratic constitution, then loudly decreed by many people, was abolished, and the leaders of the revolution set themselves up as a government of 30 men with supreme authority. And these 30 men were the 30 tyrants that came into power after the defeat of Athens against Sparta during these Peloponnesian Wars. So some of these men, you must understand, were relatives of mine and well known to me. And what is more, they actually invited me at once to join them, as though politics and I were a fit match. I was very young then, and it is not surprising that I felt as I did. I thought that the city was then living a kind of life which was unjust, and that they would bend it to justness, and so on, administer more justice. So I eagerly watched to see what they would do. And you must know, as I looked on, I saw those men in a short time make the former democracy look like a golden age. So he's noticing that these people that he thought kind of highly of, relatives, um, that they got corrupted by this power. He's like, maybe they can turn something good of Athens, but they just everything went to shit and they became worse off. The city, what used to look bad, now in contrast looked like the golden age. So he refers to his men. I think some of his relatives were Cretus and Charmides. Some people who come up in the Republic, I think Charmides does at least, they turned to politics, Athenian politics into a tyranny. Well, I'll continue. I looked at this and see, and at the men who were in politics, at the laws and customs, and the more I looked, and the older I grew, the more difficult it seemed to me to administer political affairs justly, for you cannot do so without friends and comrades you can trust. In such men I was not easy to find, for the city, you see, no longer lived in the fashion and ways of our fathers. Eager as I had once been to go into politics, as I soon, or as I looked to these things and saw everything taking any course at all with no direction or management, I ended up feeling dizzy. I did not abandon my interest in politics to discover how it might be bettered in other aspects. I was perpetually awaiting my opportunity. But at last I saw that, as far as all states now existing are concerned, they are all badly governed. For the condition of their laws is bad, almost past cure, except for some miraculous accident. So I was compelled to stay in praising true philosophy, that it was from it alone that I was able to discern any justice. And so I said that the nations of the world will never cease from trouble until either the true breed of philosophers shall come to political office, or until that the rulers shall, by some divine law, pursue philosophy. So, explaining why the end goal of the republic should be to have philosophers as kings and kings as philosophers. And that's my introduction, basically, to the republic, for any of you guys who didn't just previously read it. So, opening it up to you guys after me yapping for like 20 minutes. or I guess to open it up, I want to ask you guys, what is this just city gonna look like? What's the closest thing do you guys think it's gonna be? Something close to like a communism, something close to a democracy, something close to a dictatorship? The first time I read it, it struck me um, that it seems almost authoritarian or like dictatory because you have these like it's a type of monarchy. It's like people are kings, right? They're the absolute rulers. There's no democracy in this republic, in this ideal world. It's just philosophers saying we want this, we want that. Which isn't totally fair, I guess. Like it's not democratic at all. Um, and people just have to obey or trust that these philosophers will do what's best, which is kind of I don't know. It makes me grit my teeth a little bit. I can't be the only one talking. I mean, I'm happy to keep talking. Cade, when did you read The Republic first?
I mean, earlier in book one, he talked about how, like, if you're wise, you probably don't really want to rule just like to rule for money or whatever. He just talked about it's a necessity. So I guess he's kind of saying, like, these philosophers, if they're actually truly wise, they'll rule out of necessity and it won't be as tyrannical.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Because I think he made at one point in book one, he makes an argument or like a comparison to um, like a doctor or physician, where a proper physician, a good physician, if he saw another physician administering proper aid and proper treatment, he wouldn't want to step in and do the work for him because he already saw it was being done properly. But if someone did need help or assistance and no one was giving it to him, then it's like his duty. He has to go help this person, and that's what he saw the philosopher doing for like a nation state. It's like if the nation state's already being run properly, no need to step in. But if it's being run improperly, the way he saw it, it's like their duty. It's like a wise person's or a philosopher's like duty to step in and take the role, just like a doctor would. Did Plato see this in democracy? Um, it's an aristocracy. Yeah, it is a type of aristocracy. But instead of it being like the rich in power or the people with influence or wealth in power, it's the wisest. I think Eris means like the best or Mister, something like that. That's why like Aristotle, his actual name is like Mister the Best or something like that. Funny enough, if you translate it. And Plato's actual name is Aristocles. I don't know what Cles means. Epistocratic aristocracy. Yeah, something like that. But he didn't see it in democracy. He thought that democracy, he had like a lot of issues with it. One of it was that it was the unwise or the population, which was generally unwise or generally not knowing, and it was them who were electing the people in power. And like he had a pretty big head on his shoulders to think that the average person didn't know much, but that's I guess just like what he thought of himself. He thought of himself as a smart guy. Um, yeah. Have you guys ever heard of a technocracy? Is that a term you guys are familiar with? Because he talks a lot in the book about a tech like the techne or the craft or the art of things. So it's not as in like technology or anything, but techne as in like a craft, right? So like you can have the techne of being a doctor. So like the arts, the crafts that go into being a doctor. Or you can have the techne of being a musician, the arts, the knowledge to being a musician. And a technocracy is basically the people in power of any given domain or institution are those who are best at that thing, right? So like the person in charge of agriculture would be the best farmer there is. The person in charge of military conflict would be the best soldier. The person in charge of politics would be the best philosopher, stuff like that. And then that's how people will rule. So I think, in a way, the Republic was getting close to that, something like a technocracy. But I'm not too sure. Yeah, he was critiquing the Greek mythos story. He's kind of doing it kind of incognito. Which Greek myth? Which Greek mythos? Pantheon. Oh yeah, yeah, he does that. Yeah, he's very like subtly underhanding or like subtly jabbing at the way things are running at that point in time. Um, I don't know how this book didn't get censored, like how it was published at the time. Because if I were someone in power, I'd be pretty cheesed if Plato came out with this book. To be honest, yeah, I feel like every political writing following this book was really just in a way like a response to this book. Like Augustine's City of God was in a way a response to this book. Or who else wrote like Hobbes? I think he wrote a political commentary on this. The fact he wasn't exiled. Yeah, pretty impressive. I guess they didn't want him to also become a martyr like Socrates. I wonder what the I'm pretty like I don't know much about what people thought of Socrates or if there's any like documents of the of what people thought about him like actually. Are you guys aware of anything? Like was it just those in power that didn't like him or was it just like anyone he would come across that he would get rubbed the wrong way? Because like, he had a lot of students following him around for a while. I'm not sure. Here, there was one part, I think everyone was just like, all right, dude. Yeah, it was like enough is enough, basically. Hi, Sisyphus, welcome. What an apt name. Proper name, it fits in well. But yeah, no, there was one passage I wanted to talk about, or I want to talk about. Well, first off, I want to ask you guys, do any of you guys subscribe to the idea of a soul? Do you think we have souls? Yeah, likely. Likely. Anyone actually have like some like a I don't know how to define soul. Let's define soul as the way I guess the way Plato defines it. Something immutable, uh non-material and eternal. You can't just like kill a soul, right? Like when you die you're still a soul, stuff like that. Um like your body it's not your body, let's call it. Like it's your mind, but not like the meat mind. You guys think we have one? I like to think I have one. Yeah, I hope so too. So, can I say no? Yeah, of course. You can say whatever you want. Interesting. So there's no before life, there's no after life, according to that?
Maybe you should put a little poll in, see what people say.
I don't know. There we go. Create a poll. Okay, I'm gonna say, um, see what you guys say. Is there a before or after life? Something outside of this of this life. Ah, they change. Interesting. How do they change? I'm gonna say I don't even know what to vote for this poll. I want to say yes. 3 no's. Interesting. Hmm. I wouldn't have thought that. I think the intermediary is the anomaly. Good point. It's the life part that's like a bump in the road. Yeah, I mean, I guess because if before life and afterlife are eternal, then this is just like a little awkward blip. We're just kind of stuck here, floating around, type of like purgatory. I guess that drags in questions of why we have this little blipper purgatory. And the Christians have an answer for that. But I don't know what Plato's answer would be. So yeah, but according to Plato or his whole, yeah, I think Plato still is too. He's in his grave, still wondering about that one. Justice, but from okay, so from book 1 and 2, what was the most sensible or like the most appealing definition of justice? There was a couple. He gave repaying debts, a little unsatisfying to me. Helping your friends, harming your enemies. That one's a little unsatisfying. And then what was the other one? Ah, for advantage, for self-advantage. So I have another question for you guys. Um, do people do good things to make themselves look better? Is that why you help the man out on the street or donate to look good for the girls?
I mean, as a Christian myself, we're told specifically not to do that. Like, don't just give to show off, you know?
Yeah,
If it's possible or not, I don't know.
I think like
But I
a
think it's a
good test.
virtue to strive for.
Oh, sorry, yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say, I think it's a good virtue to strive for, though, anyways.
Hmm. Yeah, it is quite Machiavellian. Machiavellian. I think getting out of the car to help a motorcyclist is like an innate reaction. I think the more innate reaction, or the more let's call it the more common reaction, is to like freeze, is to not know what to do, just kind of be a bystander. That's what's easy. It's easier to just be on the sidelines, and I guess that's what Christianity teaches against: to not be just watching on, to engage and do good, do the good. It should be an intrinsic driver.
Yeah, it's like, don't just give to charity because it makes you look good.
Hmm.
Do it out of the kindness of your heart, you know? No one even has to know. It says, like, don't even show your good deeds in public
Yeah, I guess that's the
type
ultimate
of thing.
test: to be good when no one is watching.
Yeah, it's like a test of character.
Hmm. I'll admit though, there have been times I can think of that like I've just done something good because it would make me look good. Like I
I
like
think
quite
we all have.
honestly and shamefully, there have been times where I do good just because it makes me look good. I should probably work on. I'd like to say I don't do that anymore, but I'm sure there have been instances in the past. are you guys saying? Personally, I would have a really hard time doing it. Well, in AM, maybe you should be the Philosopher King. Depends on the person. Many times people do want to. Situational. Sometimes we do moral reasoning to do good things for my own benefit. Yeah, I think that term or the idea that we do good things for our own benefit, like for our own sanity, to make ourselves feel better. That's called like psychological egoism, um, which goes against the type of like altruism. So it's not just like actual outward goodness. It's like it makes me feel better. Like it helps me sleep at night, so I'm gonna donate. It's quite an uncomfortable thing to stomach. What denomination of Christianity are you, Kate, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't really fall under one. I mean, I take influences from a lot of denominations, but I'm not very dogmatic, I guess I could say.
Fair.
It's more of a spiritual practice than a doctrine to me.
Interesting. Were you raised Christian or did you become Christian? Like, bro.
Yes, my mom's side is like evangelical Christians, and my dad's side was Lutheran.
Interesting.
So,
The
although my
Luth
dad wasn't very religious, so
a lot of interesting history with the Lutherans and the Protestants over in Europe. They had a
oh yeah.
couple kerfuffles. Was it the you might know, is there what's the difference between Calvinists and Lutherans, if there is
Calvinists believe in predestination,
one?
so they basically believe everyone's already been selected, whether they're going to heaven or not. So they take a determinist point of view, in a sense. Like you have free will on Earth, but like if you're getting in, you're getting in. If you're not, you're not. Like
So then how would the
so.
well then how would they answer why do we have this life
I'm not a Calvinist. I don't know.
then?
I
Any
I
Calvinists in
don't
the chat?
subscribe to that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the determinists, which is it seems to go against.
Well, like God already knows everything, so He already knows who's going where. So in a sense, they would say, well, if
hmm
He already knows, He's already decided,
hmm
type of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of
So
tension between the idea of free will and uh and destination and stuff like that, and like what ends up and God's omniscience, let's
yeah, I mean, there's more differences too. Reformed theologies different, but I don't. It's kind of irrelevant to me.
say. Yeah,
But
like you're missing the main point if you're.
kinda. I mean, I see a lot of Christians. They try to preach truth, but they don't like have any spirit behind it. They don't. They're like, you must do this, you must do that, and they don't even do it themselves sometimes. So I
What
don't
is, can you define the spirit aspect?
know.
That's like a really big
Going almost like Kierkegaard there. Like, I don't know.
from Fear and Trembling.
I think it's more of like an experiential thing. Like, like how did we come up with the law? Like, you shouldn't murder people. Well, it's probably because people were murdered, and a lot of people were hurt by that. So it was more of an embodied truth. Like, we shouldn't murder people, and I don't know. Like, there's no the truth. It has truth. Like, you should abstain from this or that, and that could have truth, but we don't know because we forgot. It's like a Heideggerian, like how tradition. He talks about how tradition like conceals, um, like the original meaning behind things. Like a Christmas tree, we don't remember probably where
Wait,
it
how
came
like
from, but
Christmas
we
tree?
still practice it. Like a Christmas tree, like the meaning behind it, like we forget it over time because of tradition.
hmm
It's a Heidegger type thing, or like there's rituals we do, but we forget the reasons for. There's laws in our societies that we we probably don't remember the events or the reasons why they came about, but we still practice them.
Yeah.
So I think we forget why, I guess, these things were in place. Like, why is the ascetic life something to strive for? You know, instead of
Mhm.
just saying, you must abstain from this, you must abstain from that. Like, why? What's the benefit? Why isn't it just better for me to just go do whatever I want? You know, they don't tell you that. They just tell you, do not. They
Yeah,
don't tell you why.
that's very Kierkegaardian.
Well, the spirit is the experience that gives you the why, right?
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Spirit is what gives you the why. That's a satisfying answer. Yeah,
That's how I see it, at least.
it's not a type of like doctrine, like rule, like do this, do that. A little more intrinsic.
Yeah, I mean, like, Kierkegaard, his father was a Moravian. Moravians don't believe in doctrine. They don't. They said Jesus never gave a doctrine. They just believe in following, what he said. And I think it was Corinthians 1:13, which is all about how love is the highest virtue. So agape, and just if you live as if you are loving your neighbor and as if you are striving like love in the highest, then you're doing what you're supposed to do. It's not like much of an argument. It's just more like if you were to live this way, um, it would afford you the best life experience
Mhm.
and maybe some insights.
Yeah, I hope to have an experience like that someday.
Never know.
I think it was Augustine. He had his big awakening or moment under a like a fig tree or a pear tree in his like early 20s.
Yeah. He just heard a voice like saying, like, pick up and read, and then he opened to one of Paul's letters. I'm not sure which one, and it just resonated with him because Paul was very conflicted man,
Hmm.
and so was he. So
Yeah, that was the
I
other
don't know. A
option.
lot of people connect.
Oh, sorry, go for it.
No, I'm just saying a lot of people connect with like spiritually with a lot of the letters. Not many people connect with the law, I would say. I think that's just more of a argument that people like to get into.
Yeah, yeah, no, Augustine is sick though. Like a part I voted for Confessions when we were voting on the book. Yeah, I voted for Confession.
Yeah. Well, it's nice because it's more like a autobiography. It's less of a I don't know, it's more personal. So more people could probably relate to it.
Yeah, it's very personal. Yeah. But I guess yeah, about let's talk about Plato for a second. So his whole soul idea. Do you guys think I don't know if it's a good analogy because he tries to like equate or compare the soul with a city as if the soul has like individual parts that work together and that interact. I don't know if I like that mapping. I don't know if it's appropriate. It seems almost reductive of what a soul is.
One argument I heard for the soul, it's quite simple and it just goes like, whether I die or not, like I don't know if I'm going to live forever, but the things I did, like no matter what did happen. So whether the heat death of the universe comes, whether whatever, like the things that happened happened. So there's a forever enduring it happened, Like no matter if the laws of physics change, no matter what. So I think it's like I think he's trying to go after like an essence of the soul rather than the existence type of thing. That makes sense. Like the essence lives on forever,
Yeah,
and we should change the essence of the city maybe and of ourselves rather than trying to define the existence. I guess he's assuming existence. I don't know.
yeah. it's kind of baked into everything. Like it is there. We have a soul that's established for him.
Yeah, and that's I don't know. I feel like that's kind of like an argument that he would probably go down because it's a lot more. It's a lot less supernatural, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
It's a lot easier for people to digest that theory of a soul than the ever enduring part that did happen, no matter what happens.
There's a really interesting part coming in the next book. I want to like so one of his ideas for this perfect city, for this utopia, is there's one important component, and it's the enforcers or the guards. And he thinks that the perfect city, a good city, the ideal city, has a lot of guards that act like dogs. Um, like yeah, he literally draws the analogy of a dog. It's like you should, or dogs greet their owners, and then they bite and attack people they don't like, right? Anyone they don't know, anyone outside the city, anyone from another state gets attacked. Like they're just absolutely protective, absolutely loyal. That seems a little dystopian.
So a so a philosopher police state that's isolationist.
Yeah, no, he breaks it down. I
Hmm.
think at the end of the book, he breaks it down like philosopher kings with a bunch of guard dogs to like maintain authority and like make sure no one breaks the rules, bring up education, bring up all the, like all the kids in education, indoctrination basically, and then fighting off all exterior states so no one can come in and change what's happening. When you phrase it that way, it sounds like a dystopia.
Yeah, that's a bit yikes for me.
Yeah. And he says there also another important point is that there should be no innovation. There should be no innovation or change because once the city has become perfect, any type of innovation or change would make it worse.
Just change within the city or change within ideas. You're saying the city needs to stay the same, right? Not like they can't discuss ideas. They can't.
They can discuss as much as they want, but like the rules shouldn't be changed
Right.
once they're
The rules
established.
need to stay the same.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'm like nothing changes. They don't think anymore. It's the philosophers. You know,
They still do that, I
that's
guess.
their job. Yeah.
No innovation, no art either. I don't know if he would say no art,
Yeah. I think it's just
but
no change of
censorship
the
would be big, yeah.
status quo.
Yeah, it would be status quo, like, um, but the reason there's no issue with that is because everything's already perfect. We don't like the idea of censorship or um or like stopping innovation or stopping creativity because things are imperfect and we want to make them better. But if things are already perfect, there shouldn't be anything wrong with keeping it that way, according to Plato.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like he's saying, let's imagine a perfect city. It would be perfect. You know? Like, here's my extra details, but I'm just saying, like, hey, just imagine if everyone was perfect. How great would that be?
Yeah. And he tries I guess he tries to make it as realistic as possible. He's like, okay, but we don't live in that perfect world, so we need guards and stuff to like protect us and fight off other states.
Yeah, but then what happens to the guards? What if they're not perfect? What if they're corrupt? I mean, he's just like, if everyone played their roles perfectly,
Hmm.
then everything would be perfect. Like, wow,
It's very, very
innovative.
idealist. Let's say that.
Right.
Very idealist. Actually, what ended up happening, I think I was like watching a couple lectures about this, and the prof or whoever he was talking about that actually at one point after Plato came back from like his 12 years abroad, he was asked by King Dionysius by a king in like Sicily, I think, to actually try and like implement an actual republic two times in a city. He tried to put philosophers as kings, guard dogs, the whole thing, like map it like in real life. If he failed twice, it didn't work out, unfortunately.
Right, because I could come up with an ideal society and say, well, these people will act perfectly according to their virtue, but
Hmm.
we all know people don't do that. So I
Yeah,
think the bigger question would be how do we get people to act in accordance to the virtues rather than what's the best way to just run a society.
yeah. Using the most important pillar, the most important thing to protect in this ideal republic in this city is the education. Because you need to bring up the youth to think in a certain way and to learn certain things, to learn how to be just, to learn how to be moral, to learn how to be virtuous, and then all the gears keep turning. But it's like the first step of like establishing this education. That's tough. That's very tricky. To some
Yeah,
extent, I
it's like
think we
instead
do
of
that now.
material
Oh, sorry, continue.
it's like instead of material conditions being the foundation, like fixing the economy, like under communism, it's like instead education is the you know center of it all instead of material conditions and whatnot. You can use other examples too.
Yeah, yeah. The like the center point is education. Sounds a lot better than like making profits or being productive or like stuff like that we have nowadays. Nicer. I like that more.
Yeah,
A little bit biased though. One interesting thing I was gonna say, yeah, that I feel like in a way we do that nowadays with kids, because like it's very uncommon, let's say, for like a kid to actually want to be in class or want to like sit in a chair and listen or learn math. They like want they if they had the choice, they would just leave. They would walk out. Like we force them to stay in there. Like we're forcing education on these kids because we know it's like for their better. Like they'll end up being better people. They'll end up like knowing things that they need to know. It'll be helpful for work. But it is a type of like forced. Like you're forced to learn.
yeah, and I don't think they educate people on how to think as much as they do just packing in information, and I think that's what turns people away because there's no love for learning. Then it's just memorization. There's not really learning.
Yeah.
You're not really training your brain.
Are you from America?
Yeah,
Yeah. How was the school system there growing up?
awful.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I did well in my early years, but I struggled a lot in middle and high school. But I found this high school that was it's called project-based learning, where instead of classes, you make your own projects and you have to figure out how to get enough like credits to graduate. And that worked way better for me because then I could set up my own stuff and actually learn things I was interested in
That's super
while
cool.
still actually learning what I had to at the same time.
Oh, interesting.
I think it's a lot better system, but
I like that a lot.
not a
It's
lot of people can do it because they need more structure.
yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of kids needed more structure, so, like, they would go into the school and then, like, half of them would almost leave beginning of each year
I
because they
can't
need to be
imagine.
told what to do, they need to be herded around.
I can't imagine myself at like 16 or 15 to want to study instead of like go, I don't know, like smoke or hang out with friends or something. You need to have some sort of
Oh,
drive.
no.
You need to be like a driven kid.
Yeah. I was the one kid who was reading philosophy books, they called me the philosophy kid, so
Philosopher in training.
reading books in the corner. Yeah. It was a derogatory, it was not a compliment,
That's hilarious.
so,
What was your intro to
yeah.
philosophy? Like the first book?
Well, it was my older brothers who kinda motivated me to do it, they're much older, but I think my motivation was just learning Greek history. I was really interested in, like, the Peloponnesian War for some reason. I was, like, 11, and then my brother had read, like, Plato's Republic and stuff, so he told me to read it, and, he gifted me that book, and I don't know, I kinda read Diogenes after, and then I just got right into Nietzsche. I have, like, all of his books.
With edgy teen.
Yeah. 14-year-old me was obsessed with Nietzsche so much. I have actually a wood engraving here. This this is something I made in high school. Look at this.
It's hilarious. You must have been
I was
insufferable.
so obsessed. No, I wasn't very argumentative. I just liked learning it on my own. but I don't know. I eventually moved on. I got so many books I've read now, but yeah, it's quite the obsession.
I think it's a rite of passage for anyone who likes or is into philosophy to have a Nietzsche phase.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a Christian too, it's very like fun to read him if you're not like
Oh,
easily
yes.
offended, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes you think a lot. It's one of the more challenging things to read if that's like your faith.
Hmm.
But I think it's good. I like the challenge.
Yeah. Fun to read. Thus Spake Zarathustra was a fun read. I don't think I'll ever forget that one.
Quite the read.
Yeah.
He's very egotistical.
Very full of himself. What's the book where like the chapters are like why I'm so wise, why I'm so clever?
That's Ecce Homo, his autobiography. It's like why I'm so wise, why am I so clever, why I write such good books, and why I am destiny.
Oh no.
Why yeah, that's well, it's hard to know if he was even serious though, because every he would purposely contradict himself and layer stuff in so much sarcasm that
He hated Plato too. Bashed the hell out of him.
yeah. I'm trying to remember because I was like 14, but I mean he liked the old tragedies and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I know a lot of people criticize Plato nowadays for the way he uses reason because he adopted it from Parmenides and
No, I
he
think
kind of cut out the fluff of Parmenides.
are there any passages that stuck out to you in book one?
Just the one I mentioned where it's like, if you're wise, you don't want like wealth and power and that stuff, but also if you're wise, you know that you're going to be needed. Like that
Yeah.
your wisdom will be needed at some point. You shouldn't just sit. You would know it's better not to just sit back, but actually participate. At least he likes.
Yeah. Like you have a responsibility, Batman style.
Yeah, I think it's too a problem in the modern world. I mean, who really wants to be a politician if you really know how corrupt and how many people you have to step on and how you have to concede to donors and like, it's very hard. I think to be a do what you actually want to do, be an authentic person if you go down that route.
I wanted to do a funny poll. I wanted to like prove a point to what you just said there in the in this group chat. A couple days ago, I ended up making a couple people like mods so they could kick people out if they were like swearing or like being assholes, and then all of a sudden a bunch of people were asking to become mods. They're like, wait, why didn't I get it? Why am I not in that position? So then I wanted to put a poll out to say, do you want to be a
Of course.
moderator? And whoever voted no would get to become
Be a
the
mod, yeah, yeah,
moderator,
yeah. That makes so
just in
much
the
sense.
platonic fashion of like those who rule do not want to be rulers. I thought that would have been
Right.
funny,
That's really funny that that
funny
happened.
experiment to do.
Yeah. It's like, why do you want the responsibility? And it goes back like, are you doing it out of the kindness of your heart or are you doing it to look good, you know?
Yeah, it was like a power thing. They wanted the power.
Right.
Like a perfect
Power over
example
the
of the
book club.
Republic. And then they were making jokes. The people who I made moderators were like, "Oh, nice, now we have power. What should we do now with power?" Like, "Oh no, I've created the city of pigs. I created exactly what Plato was trying to avoid."
Hey, maybe you're the philosopher king and those are your dogs that you have running around, right?
I have my dogs and my peasants that I'm ruling. That's hilarious.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, I was chuckling about that at night. Should I make that poll?
Pretty funny. It'll also show you how many people actually watch the VODs.
Mhm. Please let me know I haven't read the book. I guess there's a couple more people that joined in. Um, I think what I'm gonna do is I'll super briefly go over the book again, and then we'll call it wraps and then meet up next week. Same time, books 3 and 4, let's do. But yeah, just to go over for the people who recently joined. Um, briefly, super briefly, what this book was about. Book 1 was all about uh, they go to a guy's house, an old man's house. They don't want to be there. I don't need my notes. They don't want to be there. His name is Cephalus, and he has a son, Polemarchus, and then there's also a sophist there, Thrasymachus or Thrasymachus. And they start to probe him and ask what justice is, and they give a couple definitions of justice. One of them is justice is paying your debts, repaying your debts. That's what makes you just. Socrates makes a counter argument. No, because you don't give a crazy man his weapon back. That's not a good definition. And they move on. Okay, Socrates is, or justice is harming others and protecting your friends. Socrates' counter example is like, no, that doesn't work all the time. You can't go around harming people. That's not good. Okay, it's justice is the strength, like imposing your strength on the weaker. It's those who are in power do what's best for them. And then he gets attacked by Socrates again. Socrates makes a fool of Thrasymachus. He starts to sweat. He doesn't know what to say. He's being outwitted. And Thrasymachus is a sophist, right? He makes all of his money through lecturing and preaching and teaching rhetoric, persuasion, all this type of stuff, and he's getting absolutely bested by Socrates, a guy with no shoes, uh, just on the street man. So he's very embarrassed and he leaves the scene. Then book 2, they kind of try and continue that conversation of what justice is, and then in come Glaucon and Adeimantus, both his brothers, or like the smarter people in these dialogues. And Glaucon tries to challenge or bring back Thrasymachus' argument. He says that people only act justly because they fear punishment or desire a good reputation. So the reason you don't break laws or jaywalk is because maybe you'll get arrested. The reason you don't cheat on a test is because you don't want a slap on the wrist from the teacher. You don't just do these things uh, for no reason because you're trying to avoid punishment. And the other reason was that Adeimantus kind of builds on or tries to like add on is that we often praise justice only for its benefits in this life and not the next. So we only do good things, things that make us look just, things that make us look good because it's going to help us out later down the road. You want a good reputation. You want to be known as the nice guy. You want to be known as the neighbor who helps everyone because then in return you will get help. And people will look at you highly and you'll get good status. And status was very important for these guys. That's where they leave it off, kind of. They're trying to discuss justice, find an appropriate definition of it, and they keep counterexampling. And then finally, they start talking about a city. They try to analogize the soul with a city. Um, a good city reflects what a good soul is. It's working in harmony. All the pieces are working together, and that's where I left off in book 2. We haven't yet discussed the city of pigs in too much detail, or any of the following cities, but that's I guess topic for next time. Um, yeah, I just want to thanks guys. I know it was mostly me rambling, so sorry about that. But I will catch you all. I'll catch you all next week, uh, same time, and then we'll talk about books 3 and 4. I'll also give a little summary, just like this time, so we're all on the same page. Okay. Thanks, Cade. Thanks, guys, for coming in.
Yeah,
Uh,
you have at least one person to talk to, right?
was talking to myself. One time, it was really
Yeah,
just
sorry about that. I actually flip flopped it, and it's been 4:30 always. but in my head it turned into 5:30, and then I got on Discord and I was like, "Oh no!"
No, that's.
Yeah.
I remember one time I had a prof who posted he had an office hours, but no one went to it, and it was over Zoom. It was like during the COVID stuff. He had an office hours during Zoom, and no one went to it, and he posted it like on his YouTube recordings. It was just him sitting in front of the camera for an hour talking to himself. Peak philosopher.
Yeah.
Now that is a
Mm.
tragedy. That is the Greek tragedy right there.
Yeah,
Hey, at least he's trying to participate.
yeah.
He's a one-man show.
One man show.
You don't need the mind will entertain itself. Okay, well, yeah, I'll catch all of you guys later. I need to go do some real life stuff and not think for a little
Good luck.
bit.
Thank you.
Okay.